The story we are about to share today transcends the ordinary, venturing into a realm where the innocence of a young boy meets the harsh reality of a grave illness. It begins with a dedicated teacher, deeply loved by her students, who was battling a silent, terrifying enemy, cancer. For months, she had endured the exhausting treatments, the hopeful glances from her family, and the ever-present shadow of uncertainty. Her classroom, usually a place of vibrant energy, had become a haven where she found solace, even as her body weakened with each passing day. She tried to hide her pain, but the astute eyes of one particular student saw beyond her brave facade, recognizing a suffering that science struggled to overcome. Among her students was a bright and gentle boy named Carlo Acutis, known not only for his intelligence, but for his profound faith. While other children worried about homework and playtime, Carlo carried a different kind of concern in his heart. He noticed his teacher's fatigue, the subtle tremors in her hands, and the forced cheerfulness that couldn't quite mask her underlying weariness. His heart, filled with an extraordinary empathy, felt the weight of her struggle. He often lingered after class, not to ask about lessons, but to offer a kind word, a gentle smile, or sometimes a silent prayer for her well-being. This young boy, often seen as an ordinary child, was about to make an extraordinary claim. Before we delve into the incredible moment that would change everything, please take a moment to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell. You won't want to miss a single detail of this powerful testimony that bridges the gap between childhood innocence and divine intervention. By subscribing, you join a community that believes in the power of faith and the miraculous events that shape our world every single day. We are dedicated to bringing you stories that inspire and challenge your perceptions of what is possible. Your support helps us share these messages of hope and wonder with a global audience. Now let's return to the classroom, where an unexpected conversation was about to unfold. One afternoon, as the classroom emptied and the teacher packed her bags, Carlo approached her with a look of earnest conviction in his eyes. He didn't speak with childish naivety, but with a surprising authority that made her pause and listen intently. "Teacher," he said softly, yet with absolute certainty, "your cancer is gone." The words hung in the air between them, startling her. She looked at him, searching for a hint of a prank or a misunderstanding, but found only pure, unwavering belief on his young face. She tried to dismiss it as a sweet gesture from a caring student, but there was an intensity in his gaze that made her heart skip a beat. It was a promise so bold, so impossible, that it was impossible to simply ignore. The teacher, a woman of science and practicality, tried to rationalize Carlo's statement. She knew her medical reports, the grim prognoses, and the difficult road ahead, filled with more treatments and uncertainty. How could a child, however well-meaning, possibly know the complex truth of her internal battle with a metastatic disease? She smiled weakly, thanking him for his kind words, trying to brush off the weight of his declaration. Yet Carlo's conviction was unwavering. He simply repeated, "It's true. It's gone." His innocent face glowed with an assurance that deeply unsettled her, pushing against the logical barriers she had built around her despair. She wondered if this was a sign, or just a beautiful yet painful fantasy. That evening, the teacher went home, feeling a strange mix of disbelief and a flicker of irrational hope sparked by Carlo's unwavering words. She tried to shake off the peculiar encounter, reminding herself of the reality of her diagnosis and the upcoming hospital appointments. Yet Carlo's voice echoed in her mind, clear and resolute, "Your cancer is gone." She found herself scrutinizing her body, searching for any subtle sign, any small change, though she knew it was illogical. Her husband noticed her contemplative mood, but attributed it to the usual emotional roller coaster of her illness. Little did they know, a divine seed had been planted in her heart, nurtured by a young boy's unwavering faith. She decided to go to bed early, hoping to sleep off the strange encounter of the day. The next morning, the teacher woke with a feeling she hadn't experienced in months, a sense of lightness, a clarity of mind that had been clouded by fatigue and pain. She still felt skeptical, but the physical sensations were undeniably different. As per her schedule, she went for her routine checkup at the hospital, expecting the usual battery of tests and anxious waiting. The doctors, unaware of Carlo's audacious promise, proceeded with their standard protocols, ordering blood tests, scans, and consultations. They were focused on monitoring her progress, adjusting her medication, and preparing her for the next phase of her arduous cancer treatment journey. She found herself telling no one about the boy's declaration, fearing ridicule or false hope. Don't forget to hit the like button if you believe in the power of prayer and unexpected miracles. Your likes help this video gain visibility and reach more people who might need to hear this inspiring story of faith and healing. By showing your support, you're helping us spread a message that true hope can be found in the most unlikely places and people. We appreciate every single interaction, as it fuels our mission to share these profound narratives with the world. Take a moment right now to click that like button and become a part of our growing community of truth seekers. Your engagement truly makes a difference, enabling us to continue our vital work and share these stories. The hospital corridors hummed with the familiar sounds of medical equipment and hushed conversations, a world of science and logic. The teacher sat patiently, trying to manage her rising anxiety, which was now mixed with a curious anticipation. When the first results came back, the nurses looked at the charts with confused expressions, rechecking the patient's name and ID. They whispered amongst themselves, their usual clinical detachment replaced by a visible bewilderment. The doctor, a seasoned oncologist, walked into the examination room, holding the preliminary reports with a furrowed brow. He had seen thousands of cases, but the numbers on this particular patient's chart were unlike anything he had ever encountered in his extensive medical career. His expression was a mixture of utter disbelief and profound shock. The doctor's voice was initially hesitant, then filled with an almost disbelieving tone as he spoke to the teacher. "We need to run these tests again," he stated, his eyes wide with confusion. There must be a mistake. The initial blood work showed markers that were drastically different from her previous results, not just improved, but virtually undetectable for cancer activity. He ordered immediate, more comprehensive scans and biopsies, convinced that the lab had mixed up her samples with another patient's. The teacher, hearing these words, felt a jolt go through her entire body. Carlo's voice, so clear and confident, echoed in her mind. "Your cancer is gone." Could it be true? The scientific explanation was simply not adding up. This was the moment where her world began to shift. The atmosphere in the diagnostic wing became electric as more specialists were called in to review the startling new data. Doctors who had spent their lives studying the slow, painful progression of tumors were now staring at empty screens. Where there had once been clear clusters of malignant cells, there was now only healthy, regenerating tissue. They checked the machine calibrations, convinced that a technical error was to blame for such an outrageous anomaly. The head of oncology paced the small room, rubbing his temples while looking at the patient's previous history. He knew this woman's case better than almost anyone else, and he knew that cancer simply does not vanish. He felt the foundations of his medical training shaking as he prepared to order a third round of tests. The teacher sat on the edge of the examination table, her hands trembling not from fear, but from a growing wonder. She watched the frantic movements of the medical staff through the glass window, sensing their deep professional confusion. In her mind, she wasn't seeing the white coats or the sterile equipment. She was seeing Carlo's bright, calm eyes. She remembered how he hadn't said he hoped she would get better, but that she already was better. That distinction now seemed like the most important detail in the world as she waited for the official word. She felt a warmth spreading through her chest, a physical sensation of health that she had forgotten existed. It was as if the boy's words had acted as a direct command to her very cells. Please share this video with someone who is currently facing a difficult health battle and needs a reason to hope. Your share could be the very thing that helps them keep fighting during their darkest and most lonely hours. We believe that stories like this serve as a powerful reminder that we are never truly alone in our suffering. By spreading this message, you are helping to create a global network of support and inspiration for those in need. Simply click the share button and send this link to a friend, a family member, or a support group. It takes only a second to potentially change someone's entire perspective on their own personal struggle for life. Now let's go back to the moment the doctor finally returned with the final, undeniable medical results. When the oncologist finally re-entered the room, his face was pale and he looked like a man who had seen a ghost. He didn't sit down at his desk as he usually did. He simply stood there holding a stack of papers. "I don't know how to tell you this," he began, his voice cracking with a rare and visible emotion. He explained that every single test, from the blood work to the high-resolution imaging, showed the exact same thing. There was no trace of the cancer that had been ravaging her body just 48 hours prior to this. He called it a spontaneous remission, a term doctors use when they have absolutely no scientific explanation for a cure. But the teacher knew that spontaneous wasn't the right word. She knew it was a deliberate miracle. The teacher asked the doctor if such a thing had ever happened in his 20 years of high-level medical practice. He looked at her and slowly shook his head, admitting that he had never seen anything this complete or rapid. Usually, a remission is a slow process that leaves behind scars or evidence of the previous cellular battle. In her case, it was as if the cancer had never even existed in the first place, leaving her pristine. He confessed that if he hadn't seen her previous scans with his own eyes, he wouldn't believe it was possible. The medical team was in a state of shock, whispering in the hallways about the impossible patient in room 4. She realized then that Carlo's promise was not just a comfort, but a documented physical reality in her. She left the hospital that afternoon feeling as though she were walking on air, the world looking brighter than before. She drove home in silence, her mind racing with the need to tell someone, yet fearing no one would believe. How do you explain to a rational world that a 15-year-old boy cured you with a single sentence? She thought about the millions of people who pray for such a moment and wondered why she was chosen. She felt a profound responsibility to honor what had happened, to not let this grace be hidden or forgotten. Her husband met her at the door, expecting bad news, but he saw the radiance in her face immediately. She didn't even have to speak for him to know that something miraculous had taken place in that building. If you are moved by this incredible turning point, please leave a comment below with the word miracle. We want to see how many of you believe that there is more to this life than what science can prove. Your comments help us build a community of believers and seekers who are not afraid to ask the big questions. It also helps the YouTube algorithm realize that this content is valuable and should be shown to more viewers. Hearing from you is the best part of our work, and we value every story or thought you share here. It only takes a moment to type it out, but it means the world to our small production team. Let us move forward to the next day when the teacher returned to the school to see Carlo. The next morning, she arrived at the school early, her heart pounding against her ribs with a rhythmic, healthy force. She stood at the classroom door, watching her students file in, searching for the one face that held the secret. When Carlo walked in, he didn't look surprised to see her standing there, healthy and vibrant without her scarf. He gave her a small, knowing nod, a look that said he had been expecting this exact outcome all along. She wanted to run to him and hug him, but she stayed in her professional role, though her eyes teared. The lesson that day was hard to teach because she was looking at the living embodiment of a divine mystery. She realized that her student was also her teacher, showing her the true power of a pure and faithful heart. During the break, she managed to pull Carlo aside for a moment of private conversation in the quiet, empty hallway. She told him about the hospital, the shocked doctors, and the tests that showed her body was completely clean. She asked him how he could have possibly known with such certainty that the cancer was gone before the tests. Carlo just smiled, that famous, gentle smile, and told her that he had asked the boss to take care of it. To him, it was the most natural thing in the world, like asking a friend for a small, simple favor. He didn't want any credit or praise. He simply wanted her to know that she was loved by God. The teacher felt a humility she had never known, standing in the presence of such a simple yet massive faith. She spent the rest of the day in a daze, watching Carlo interact with his friends as if he were just a boy. He played, he laughed, and he talked about his computer projects, never once mentioning the miracle he had just brokered. It was then she realized that Carlo didn't see himself as a superhero or someone special, just a servant. He was a bridge between the digital world he loved and the spiritual world he inhabited so deeply and fully. She looked at her classroom and realized that everything had changed, though the walls and the desks looked the same. Her life was no longer about the fear of death, but about the joy of a second chance given by grace. She knew that her testimony would eventually have to be shared with the entire world to honor this gift. The news of the teacher's spontaneous remission began to spread like wildfire through the small school community and beyond. Colleagues who had seen her struggling just days before were now staring at her in disbelief as she walked. They whispered in the staff room about medical errors, while others spoke of a divine intervention that they couldn't explain. The teacher found herself at the center of a storm of questions she wasn't quite ready to answer fully yet. She felt a protective instinct over Carlo, wanting to shield him from the intense curiosity of the adult world. She knew that if she revealed the source of the promise, life would change for the young boy forever. Yet, the joy of her health was so radiant that it acted as a beacon for everyone she met. At the hospital, the medical board decided to open a formal inquiry into the case to ensure no protocols were missed. They requested all her previous scans, wanting to compare the original tumor sites with the new, healthy tissue samples. The oncologists were fascinated by the lack of scarring, a phenomenon that defied the usual healing process of internal organs. They interviewed the nurses who had been present, looking for any environmental factor that might have triggered a reaction. Every scientific avenue they explored led to a dead end, leaving them with more questions than actual medical answers. The doctor who first saw the results began to keep a private journal of the events he witnessed. He found himself looking up the name of the boy the teacher had mentioned in a moment of joy. If you find this story of hope and healing truly inspiring, please subscribe to our channel and join our community. We are dedicated to bringing you the most powerful and well-documented stories of faith from across the entire world. By subscribing, you ensure that these testimonies reach a wider audience of people who are searching for deeper meaning. Your support is what allows us to continue our research and share these incredible moments with you every week. We believe that everyone deserves to hear about the light that shines in the darkest corners of our human lives. Just click the red button and the bell icon to stay updated on our latest releases and special content. Now let us look at how Carlo responded to the growing attention surrounding his teacher's miraculous recovery. Carlo continued his daily routine with a humility that was both baffling and deeply moving to those who knew him. He didn't brag about the miracle or seek any special treatment from the faculty or his many young peers. In fact, he seemed more interested in finishing his website about Eucharistic miracles than discussing his own role in a cure. When students asked him if he was the one who fixed the teacher, he would simply point to the sky. He told them that he was just the mailman delivering a message from the king to someone who needed it. His lack of ego made the event even more profound, as it lacked any trace of the typical human pride. The teacher watched him from across the courtyard, realizing she was seeing a saint in the making every day. The teacher's husband, a man who had been a quiet skeptic, found his own worldview shifting after seeing his wife's health. He had watched her waste away for months, preparing himself for the inevitable goodbye that every cancer family fears. Now he was watching her cook dinner with an energy she hadn't possessed even before her initial medical diagnosis. He began to attend church with her, sitting in the back row and trying to process the impossible gift. He wanted to meet Carlo, to thank him for giving him back his wife and his future life together. But his wife told him to wait, as Carlo preferred to stay in the shadows of the divine light. They decided to keep the details of the boy's promise within their family for a little while longer. As the weeks passed, the teacher's health remained perfect, and her follow-up appointments continued to show absolutely no signs of cancer. The medical team was forced to close their investigation, officially labeling the event as an unexplained medical phenomenon in the records. While the doctors were unsatisfied with the lack of a biological cause, the teacher felt a deep and lasting peace. She spent her evenings reading about the lives of saints, trying to understand the spiritual gravity of her situation. She realized that her healing was not just for her own benefit, but to serve as a testimony. Every breath she took was now a prayer of thanksgiving for the boy who saw her pain and spoke. She began to write down her experience, ensuring that every detail of the 24-hour turnaround was accurately preserved. Don't forget to like this video and share your own thoughts on miracles in the comments section below. We love hearing about your personal experiences with faith and the moments that have changed your own life's path. Your engagement helps this video reach more people who might be struggling with their own health or spiritual doubts. By liking and commenting, you are helping to build a community of hope that spans across every single continent. We read every message and are often moved by the stories of resilience and grace that you choose to share. It only takes a second to participate, but your voice adds a vital layer to the mission of this channel. Let's continue to explore the deeper mystery of why Carlo chose to speak at that exact moment. Carlo's parents began to notice that their son was spending even more time in front of the Blessed Sacrament. They didn't know about the teacher's miracle yet, but they saw a new intensity in his eyes and his prayers. He seemed to be carrying the weight of many people's suffering in his heart, offering it up with a smile. They often wondered what was going on in the mind of their son, who seemed so connected to heaven. To them, he was just their boy, but they could feel the grace that seemed to follow him into every room. They supported his digital ministry, not knowing it would one day become a global phenomenon for the entire church. Carlo was preparing for his own journey, one that would soon take a very sudden and very difficult turn. One day in class, the teacher gave a lesson on the history of the church, and she found herself looking at Carlo. She spoke about the power of faith to move mountains, and she saw him give her a very subtle, warm wink. It was a private moment of acknowledgement that she would carry in her heart for the rest of her long life. She realized that Carlo was teaching her more about history and truth than any textbook ever could in a year. He wasn't just talking about the past, he was living a reality that was ancient and yet completely new. She felt a surge of courage and decided that she could no longer keep the truth of the miracle secret. She asked the school principal for a meeting to discuss what had happened between her and her young student. The meeting with the principal was filled with long silences as the teacher recounted the exact words Carlo had spoken. The principal, a man of faith himself, was moved to tears by the simplicity and the power of the account. He had seen the medical reports and knew the teacher was telling the truth about her sudden and complete recovery. They both looked out the window at the playground where Carlo was laughing and running with his school friends. They realized they were witnessing something that would eventually be studied by the Vatican and the rest of the world. It was a moment of profound realization that the sacred was present in their very own ordinary school building. They agreed to handle the matter with the utmost respect and care for the boy's privacy and peace. The school principal decided to consult with a medical professional who was also a close friend of the family. He wanted to ensure that the documentation of the teacher's recovery was bulletproof for any future formal church inquiries. They gathered the pre-treatment biopsies and compared them with the post-miracle imaging that had left the hospital staff baffled. The medical consultant noted that the speed of the cellular regeneration was technically outside the biological laws of nature. It wasn't just that the cancer was gone. The organs looked as if they had never been diseased. This lack of cellular memory, or scarring, is one of the most rare signatures of a divine healing. The principal kept these records in a secure safe, knowing their historical and spiritual value would grow. He began to see his school not just as an institution, but as a sanctuary of grace. Carlo, meanwhile, seemed completely oblivious to the high-level discussions happening in the offices regarding his promise to the teacher. He was busy helping a classmate with a difficult coding project, showing the same patience he gave to everyone. When the teacher tried to thank him again with a small gift, he politely declined with a humble smile. He told her that the best way to thank him was to attend Mass and pray for those still sick. He was always redirecting the attention away from himself and toward the Eucharist, which he called his highway. The teacher realized that for Carlo, miracles were simply the logical outcome of a life lived in constant prayer. He didn't see the supernatural as something distant, but as a reality that was always within reach. His presence in the hallway brought a sense of peace that even the most rowdy students felt. If you believe that faith can truly move mountains and change lives, please click the like button right now. Your engagement helps our channel grow and ensures that stories like this reach people who are currently in despair. We strive to create content that serves as a beacon of light in an often dark and cynical digital world. By liking this video, you are casting a vote for hope and sharing a testimony of the extraordinary. Our community is built on the belief that these impossible stories deserve to be told with dignity and truth. It only takes a second to click, but the impact on the YouTube algorithm is massive and very helpful. Thank you for being an active part of this mission to spread the news of Carlo's amazing legacy. Now, let's explore the medical community's reaction to the teacher's perfect health. The oncologist, who had originally treated the teacher, found himself unable to stop thinking about the 24-hour turnaround. He began to research other cases of sudden remission, but none matched the absolute completeness of this specific event. He noted in his personal files that the patient's vitality seemed to have increased beyond her precancerous state. Her blood pressure, lung capacity, and even her vision showed improvements that were statistically improbable for her age group. He secretly wished he could meet the student she mentioned, but his professional ethics kept him from prying. Instead, he started to be more open to his patient's spiritual beliefs, noticing a strange connection to their recovery. The doctor was being changed by a patient he couldn't explain, and a boy he had never met. He realized that science was just a small window into a much larger and more complex room. As the word of the teacher's health reached the local parish, people began to look at Carlo with a new sense of wonder. He would arrive at the church early on his bicycle, kneeling in the same spot every single morning without fail. People noticed that when he prayed, he seemed to be in a different world, completely undisturbed by the noise. A few elderly parishioners started asking him to pray for their sick relatives, sensing a special grace in his words. Carlo never promised them a cure as he had with the teacher, but he promised to bring them to Jesus. He treated every request with the same seriousness, writing names down in a small notebook he kept in his bag. The teacher watched from a distance, seeing her student become a beacon of hope for an entire neighborhood. The teacher's classroom became a place where students felt safe to talk about their own fears and their growing faith. She used her second chance at life to inspire them to look for the miracles in the small details of life. She noticed that the atmosphere of the class had shifted from competitive to supportive, led by Carlo's quiet example. Students who used to skip school were now showing up early, hoping to catch a glimpse of the miracle boy. Carlo, however, just wanted to talk about the lives of the saints or the latest advances in computer programming. He managed to balance being a normal teenager with being a vessel for something far more ancient and powerful. The teacher felt she was witnessing the early church in action within the walls of a modern-day school. She knew this period of peace was a precious gift that wouldn't last forever in its current form. Don't forget to join our channel membership for exclusive access to detailed interviews and behind-the-scenes footage. By becoming a member, you support the high-quality production of these documentaries and help us travel to sacred sites. Members get early access to our documentaries and can vote on which saint or miracle we should investigate next time. We are committed to remaining a truthful and inspiring voice in the digital world, and we can't do it alone. Your support allows us to travel to sites like Assisi to bring you the most authentic and powerful footage possible. Click the Join button below to see the different tiers and the special perks we have for you. Your partnership is essential to our growth and our ability to share these life-changing testimonies with everyone. The teacher's husband finally had the chance to meet Carlo during a school event held in the crowded gymnasium. He shook the boy's hand and found himself unable to find the words to express his deep, lifelong gratitude. Carlo just looked at him with those kind, wise eyes and told him to enjoy the time they had together. It was a simple statement, but it carried a weight that the husband felt in his soul for many years. He realized that the miracle wasn't just about the physical healing, but about the restoration of their family's joy. He walked away from the encounter, feeling as though he had met someone who truly knew the secrets of the universe. Carlo went back to helping with the sound system, acting like any other helpful and tech-savvy student would. The husband and wife shared a look of total understanding. Their life was now divided into before and after Carlo. As the months turned into a year, the teacher's story was used as a case study in a local medical seminar. Of course, they didn't mention the boy's name or the spiritual nature of the promise, focusing only on the data. The medical professionals debated the possibility of a delayed reaction to the previous treatments, but the timing was off. One young intern suggested that perhaps the human mind has healing codes that we haven't discovered yet in our labs. The teacher, who was invited to speak about her experience, simply smiled and told them that she was a living mystery. She knew the truth was much simpler and much more beautiful than any of their complex scientific theories. She was the recipient of a grace that was negotiated in a classroom and sealed with a prayer. The medical community remained divided, but her health remained absolutely perfect and consistent. Carlo began to work on a new project, a map of all the places where the Virgin Mary had appeared. He told the teacher that he felt he had a deadline and needed to finish his digital work quickly. At the time, she didn't understand what he meant, thinking he was just being an ambitious and focused student. He seemed to be in a race against time, his fingers flying across the keyboard during every spare moment. He was building a digital legacy that would outlive his physical presence on this earth by many, many decades. The teacher helped him with some of the historical research, feeling honored to be part of his sacred mission. She didn't know that the boy who saved her life was preparing for his own final rapid transition. The deadline, he felt, was a premonition of the journey that would soon shock the entire world. The atmosphere of joy surrounding the teacher's recovery was suddenly eclipsed by a dark cloud that no one expected. Carlo, the vibrant boy who had spent his days helping others and coding for the church, fell suddenly ill. It started with what seemed like a simple flu, but his strength vanished with a terrifying and unnatural speed. Within days, the boy who had promised life to his teacher was fighting for his own in a hospital bed. The news hit the school like a physical blow, leaving the students and faculty in a state of utter shock. The teacher felt a cold dread in her heart, wondering if there was a connection between her life and his. She rushed to the hospital, desperate to offer the same comfort he had once given her so freely. She found herself praying for a miracle, for the one who had brokered her own incredible healing. The diagnosis was devastating, a lightning-fast form of leukemia that left the medical team with almost no time to react. Unlike the teacher's cancer, which had been a long battle, Carlo's illness was an aggressive sprint toward the end. He accepted the news with a serenity that baffled the nurses, who were used to seeing fear and anger. He told his parents that he was offering his suffering for the Pope and for the mission of the church. The teacher stood outside his room, watching through the small window as he lay surrounded by machines and tubes. She remembered his words about having a deadline and realized with horror that he had known his time was short. It felt as though he had traded his own health to ensure that she could continue her work. The weight of this realization was almost too much for her heart to bear in that moment. If you are moved by Carlo's selfless heart, please share this video with your friends and family on social media. We believe that the world needs to hear about this young man's courage and his incredible spirit of sacrifice. By sharing, you help us reach people who may be going through their own dark night of the soul and need light. Stories of such profound love have the power to change how we view our own daily struggles and challenges. Your help in spreading this message is a vital part of our mission to keep Carlo's amazing legacy alive. Just a few clicks can bring this testimony to a screen where someone is desperately searching for hope today. Thank you for being a messenger of this story and for helping us touch lives around the entire globe. The medical staff at the hospital were the same ones who had witnessed the teacher's impossible recovery just months before. They recognized her in the hallway and saw the irony of the situation playing out before their very eyes. The oncologist who had marveled at her clean scans was now looking at Carlo's catastrophic blood work with deep sadness. He couldn't explain why the miracle boy was facing such a brutal and unstoppable cellular war in his marrow. The contrast between the teacher's perfect health and Carlo's rapid decline was a mystery that haunted the entire department. Science had failed to explain her cure, and now it was failing to find a way to save him. The doctor felt a sense of powerlessness he hadn't experienced since his first day of medical school residency. He sat in his office, staring at the two files, unable to find a logical bridge between them. Carlo's parents remained by his side, witnessing a grace that was as physical and tangible as the hospital equipment. He would smile at them between bouts of intense pain, telling them not to be sad because he was going home. He asked for the teacher to come into the room, wanting to see her one last time before his journey ended. When she entered, he didn't look like a dying boy. He looked like a soul, already half submerged in a great light. He grabbed her hand with surprising strength and whispered that she must tell everyone about the beauty of the Eucharist. He didn't ask for a miracle for himself, only for the strength to finish his work for the boss. The teacher wept, realizing that she was witnessing the most profound lesson she would ever learn in her life. She promised him that his message would never be forgotten as long as she had breath to speak. The teacher spent the night in the hospital chapel, joined by dozens of students who had come to pray for Carlo. The silence was only broken by the soft sound of rosary beads clicking and the occasional sob of a classmate. They were all waiting for a miracle, the same kind of 24-hour turnaround that had saved their teacher months ago. But as the sun began to rise, word came down from the intensive care unit that Carlo's organs were failing. The teacher realized that sometimes the miracle isn't the healing of the body, but the transformation of the soul. Carlo was teaching them how to die with the same grace and certainty with which he had lived his life. He was showing them that death is not a defeat, but a transition into a much larger and brighter reality. The atmosphere was heavy with grief, yet it was also filled with a strange and undeniable sense of peace. Please leave a comment below with your favorite quote from Carlo Acutis or a prayer for those suffering today. Your words help create a digital tapestry of faith that can encourage others who are reading this thread right now. We believe that there is great power in a community that prays together and shares its burdens in the light. By commenting, you also help the YouTube algorithm understand that this video is fostering a meaningful and helpful discussion. We value every single one of your contributions and are often inspired by the wisdom you share with us. It takes only a minute to leave a message, but it can provide comfort to someone half a world away. Thank you for being such an active and compassionate part of our channel's mission and family of believers. The final hours of Carlo's life were a testament to the highway to heaven he had spoken about so often in class. He received the anointing of the sick with a joy that seemed to radiate from his very skin, despite the illness. The doctors noted that his heart rate remained remarkably steady even as his other vital systems began to shut down. It was as if his spirit was in total control of the exit, ensuring that every moment was filled with purpose. The teacher watched as his parents kissed his forehead, handing their son back to the Creator with tears and trust. She felt a surge of energy in her own body, a reminder of the health that Carlo had restored to her. She knew that her life was now a living monument to the sacrifice of this 15-year-old boy from Milan. The machines finally went silent, but the silence in the room was filled with a presence that was beyond words. The doctors were shocked when they looked at the final report, noting that Carlo had passed away with a smile on his face. In their decades of experience with leukemia, they had never seen a patient remain so peaceful until the very last breath. They stood in the hallway, discussing the Acutis case with a mixture of professional confusion and deep, personal awe. One nurse remarked that she felt as though she had been standing on holy ground for the last few days. The teacher approached them and shared the story of how Carlo had told her she was cured months ago. The medical team listened in silence, their scientific skepticism finally giving way to a sense of profound and holy wonder. They realized they had been part of a story that would be told for generations as a sign of God's love. The boy who saved his teacher had finished his race, and he had won it with a perfect score. The funeral was a gathering of thousands, a sea of people whose lives had been touched by Carlo's digital and personal work. The teacher sat in the front, her heart full of a bittersweet mixture of grief and an overwhelming sense of gratitude. She looked at the casket and remembered the boy who had leaned over her desk to promise her that she was cured. She knew that her 24-hour turnaround was just the beginning of a much larger miracle that was now unfolding. Carlo was no longer just her student. He was a bridge for the entire world to find their way back to faith. She felt a renewed sense of purpose, a calling to share the story of the boy who traded his life for hers. The bells of the church rang out, not with a mournful sound, but with a triumphant call to the heaven. She walked out into the sunlight, her cancer gone, her soul awakened, and her mission finally and clearly defined. The teacher's life after the funeral became a living testimony that she shared with anyone willing to listen to the truth. She returned to her classroom with a new fire in her soul, teaching her students that life is a precious gift. Every morning, she would look at Carlo's empty desk and feel a profound sense of his continuing presence in the room. She kept her medical records in a special folder, showing them to skeptics who couldn't believe in the 24-hour turnaround. Her story reached the ears of the Vatican's postulators, who were already beginning to investigate Carlo's life for beatification. She was called to testify before a formal commission, presenting her clinical history and the boy's impossible promise. The experts listened with a mixture of professional scrutiny and a deep sense of spiritual awe at her words. Her health remained a constant, physical proof that what happened in that school was not a mere coincidence. The Medical Commission of the Congregation for the Causes of Saints spent years examining every page of the teacher's file. They interviewed every doctor who had signed her charts and every nurse who had witnessed her sudden, complete recovery. The experts looked for any possible natural explanation, from misdiagnosis to an extremely rare delayed reaction to the chemotherapy. However, the evidence was overwhelming. The cancer was aggressive and terminal one day and entirely absent the very next. The theologians and doctors finally reached a unanimous conclusion that the healing was indeed instantaneous, complete, and lasting. It was officially recognized as a miracle obtained through the intercession of the young cyber-apostle, Carlo Acutis. The teacher felt a sense of closure, knowing her personal miracle was now a light for the whole church. If you want to support our mission to share more stories of modern-day miracles, please join our channel membership. Your monthly contribution helps us cover the costs of deep research and high-quality video production for this global community. Members get early access to our documentaries and can vote on which saint or miracle we should investigate next time. We are committed to remaining a truthful and inspiring voice in the digital world, and we can't do it alone. Your support allows us to travel to sites like Assisi to bring you the most authentic and powerful footage possible. Click the Join button below to explore the various tiers and see how you can become a partner in faith. We are deeply grateful for your generosity and for being such a vital part of our channel's future. The teacher eventually made a pilgrimage to the tomb of Carlo in Assisi, where his body lies in a state of grace. Standing before the glass, she saw him not as a distant figure, but as the boy who had once winked at her. She realized that her healing was just one small part of the massive digital highway he had built for the world. Millions of people were now discovering the Eucharist because of the website he had worked so hard to finish on time. She left a small note at the tomb, simply saying, "Thank you for the second chance," and felt a surge of peace. Her life was no longer shadowed by the fear of a returning illness, but illuminated by a certain and lasting hope. She knew that her deadline would eventually come too, but she was no longer afraid of the final transition. Carlo had shown her that the other side is not a dark void, but a beautiful and welcoming home. The doctors who once treated her at the hospital eventually published a paper on anomalous rapid remissions in medical journals. While they couldn't mention the boy's prayer, they documented the teacher's case as a landmark in oncology and clinical study. One of the surgeons secretly converted to Catholicism after attending a lecture given by the teacher about her spiritual experience. He realized that a surgeon's knife can only go so far, but a pure heart can reach across the divine veil. The hospital staff still talks about the Acutis patient whenever they face a case that seems completely hopeless and dark. They learn that there is always a boss who has the final say over the machines and the clinical laboratory results. The teacher's miracle became a seed of faith that grew in the most unlikely and sterile medical environments. Carlo Acutis was beatified in 2020, becoming the first millennial saint to be elevated to the altars of the modern world. The teacher was there in the front row, watching as the portrait of her student was unveiled in the basilica. She saw the same jacket he used to wear and the same gentle smile that had changed her life forever. It was a moment of global recognition for a boy who showed that holiness is possible in the age of the internet. The teacher felt a deep pride, not in herself, but in the wisdom of a child who saw heaven so clearly. She realized that her 24-hour turnaround was a sign for the whole world to look up from their digital screens. Carlo had used a computer to save souls and a simple sentence to save a life he truly loved. Please click the notification bell so you never miss an episode of our series on the miracles of the saints. We have many more incredible stories to share with you, each one backed by powerful testimonies and medical evidence. By staying connected, you help us build a community that values truth, beauty, and the power of the supernatural. We are constantly searching for the most inspiring narratives to bring to your screen every single week without fail. Your attention is what allows this channel to thrive and continue its work of spreading light in the digital darkness. Just one click ensures that you are the first to know when we release our next deep dive documentary film. Thank you for your time and for your commitment to exploring the mysteries of faith with us today. Today, the teacher is retired, but she continues to share Carlo's message in parishes and schools across the entire country. She shows everyone her old medical scans and then stands before them as a vibrant, healthy, and very grateful woman. She tells them that Carlo didn't just save her from cancer, he saved her from a life without a spiritual purpose. She encourages young people to use their talents for good, just as the boy from Milan did with his computers. Her house is filled with pictures of Carlo, and she prays to him every day, as if he were still her student. She knows that their conversation in the hallway that afternoon was a moment that will echo into the halls of eternity. Her life is a living proof that miracles aren't just stories from the past, but realities in our present. The story of the boy who told his teacher, "Your cancer is gone," continues to inspire millions of people every day. It serves as a reminder that the most powerful force in the universe is not a medicine, but a selfless love. Carlo Acutis showed us that a 15-year-old can have the wisdom of an ancient sage and the heart of a giant. He proved that science and faith are not enemies, but two ways of looking at the same magnificent and divine creation. The doctors were shocked, the teacher was cured, and the world was given a new and very modern kind of hero. As we navigate our own challenges, let us remember the boy who said that the Eucharist is his highway. May his courage and his unwavering faith give us the strength to face our own impossible situations with a smile. We thank you for joining us on this journey through the life of Carlo Acutis and the teacher he miraculously saved. May this testimony stay in your heart and provide you with a sense of peace and hope in your own daily life. Remember that sometimes the answers we seek are not found in a laboratory, but in the simple faith of a child. God is still speaking to us today through the technology we use and the people we meet in our daily paths. Let us be open to the 24-hour turnarounds that can happen in our own souls when we dare to truly believe. Until we meet again in our next video, stay grounded in hope and keep looking for the light of the divine. May the blessing of the Creator be with you and your family as you walk your own highway to the heaven.